Hello, hello. Happy Thursday and welcome to our weekly Thursday. Rick is joining me
Hi,
today.
everybody.
Whew. Welcome to our weekly live show that we love coming here, or I love coming here. Sometimes Rick comes in with me, and sometimes other guests come in here with me. But today I'm super excited about the conversation that we are going to have. And it's going to be an incredible conversation that actually came out of Rick and I just having a conversation with one another. We like to, at night before going to sleep, just connect and talk. And a lot of the times, these conversations lead to very like deep conversations about what's happening, in the collective, in our relationship, about our journey. And I told Rick when he was sharing this with me, the topic that we're going to talk about today, I told him we have to share this with others. So that is, what we're going to talk about actually, and you can explain a little more about what we're going to talk about, but really, um, really, really powerful stuff. So if you're joining us, welcome. Make sure that you say hello. And if you're watching the replay, hashtag replay. And for all of you new people that are joining this group, I am Yana, and I'm a transformational marriage coach, and I help women feel fulfilled and happy in their relationships. And this group is for you. I post daily content in the group to really support you in your relationship and have a good relationship, but you just want it to be great. I'm always about growing and really just making whatever wherever you're at even better. So welcome, and this is my amazing husband Rick.
Hi,
You want to
everybody.
introduce yourself?
I'm Rick, her amazing husband. Hi, Susanna.
Yes.
Um, yeah, Yana was talking about these conversations that we have, and for me, you know, sort of distinguishing what's been going on in terms of like the dynamics between men and women and women and men has just been something that I I I love to do, and it's just something that's in me, and it's part of the way my brain works, and I'm always looking at that for myself in my own life, and so it just kind of translates into everything that Yana does and I do in terms of like how we bring our personal beliefs and practices into our professional lives.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really about, and sometimes I'm going to read because I wrote a bunch of stuff and I can't remember all of it, but I'll read some of it and then I'll actually we'll just talk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I want to read, like, just to kick this off. I want to read a quote from A Course of Love. There's another book called A Course of Miracles that was written. This is one called A Course of Love. So the quote is, "What was is being thrown out, and the first step in this is embracing what you have not yet embraced." So what was is being thrown out, and the first step in this is embracing what you have not yet embraced. You are embracing sides of yourselves that were previously undervalued, rather than looking for another to provide what you lack. This is really about the relationship. You are embracing sides of yourselves that were previously valued, rather than looking for another to provide what you lack. This is important and universal in its impact. It would seem to be about balance, but it's about wholeness. Male and female are labels that are laden with attributes. And when the different attributes are merged, male and female will no more will be no more, and wholeness will reign. So this is the
Mm-hmm.
quote from A Course of Love.
Mm,
And it's really
so
talking
good.
about like how, we've got, like, you have who you really are, right? Who we really are, right? And this self that is not yet realized, right? Because we haven't really embraced it because we've been afraid, or because we weren't loved enough or shown enough attention, or whatever our story is about it, right? And so what we do is we look for another human being to provide what we lack, right? And so then we get into other relationships with men and with women, right? And so then it all becomes about that person providing what's missing, right? And it's important to really get present to that, because that's really the core of the dynamic between men and women, right? Well, in a romantic relationship anyway, right? It's really about providing what's lacking over here, right? Because I haven't embraced it, or you haven't embraced it, or she hasn't embraced it, right? And so there's a separateness, right? That's inherent in that. And this is really about returning to the wholeness and how you do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll give you an example, right, in terms of like our separateness, right? So like, why do women take the last name of men? For the most part, I'm not saying this is everywhere, right? So I'm generalizing. Or why do women make less money than men for doing the same exact job,
Mm-hmm.
right? They call it the glass ceiling. Why are men not supposed to cry? Or why are men supposed to be sort of the breadwinners or pay for dinner when you go out on a date or something,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, in order to get into the conversation, and I'm going to try to go through this as fast as I can. We're going to talk about the current paradigm that governs the dynamic between men and women for a little bit to set up the context for the conversation, right? So, we're really talking about the paradigm of like the survivors, right? So, what kind of society do we live in, right? And how did we get here, right? So, for basically 200,000 years since modern human beings started walking around, we've been surviving our environment. And we haven't just been surviving our physical environment, we've been surviving our social environments also, right? And so during this time, it was really sort of the survival of the fittest, right? Or Darwinism, like the theory of evolution, right? That like the strong survived, right? And so men went out and hunted, and you got the whole hunter-gatherer conversation. So civilization began around 4000 BC. And what I think is really interesting is that patriarchy began around 3000 BC. So when I ask about what kind of society we live in, what I'm really getting to is that we live in a mostly patriarchal one,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And it's been around for so long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, for thousands of
Yeah,
years, right?
thousands and thousands and thousands.
And so, patriarchy is a social system in which men hold the primary power in predominant roles of political leadership and religious leadership, right? So moral authority and that kind of thing, and social privilege. So it's kind of that cliche where it's a man's world, right? So male rulers, whether political or religious, men have been leading this world for the better part of a couple of millennia at least, right? So this is our current paradigm,
Yeah.
right? So this is kind of where we exist inside of.
Mm-hmm.
A patriarchal society that is predicated upon our need to survive, right? And our ability to predict our survivability. So in other words, we need to know that we're going to be able to survive tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know, you need to know, she needs to know, everybody needs to know.
It's just like a human
Yeah,
thing.
it's a human way of
Survival.
being, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we have to survive. And it really separates us into survival of the fittest, sort of you versus me. We are separate, right? So this is like Darwinism at its peak, right? So how did this paradigm impact the dynamic between men and women in our basic social units? So not society as a larger scale, but like in a nuclear unit, in our nuclear families, right? So now that we're living together, how did that paradigm impact us, right?
Yeah, and actually I'd love to hear from you, and I want to just check in. If you're joining us live, make sure that you say hello, and if you're watching the replay, #replay, so we know that you're in this powerful conversation with us. As you can tell, Rick is the one who, is really like the one leading this conversation, and I'm just soaking it all up. I love when he shares with me about all of this.
Yeah, the other day we were talking about, she's like, dude, you have to share this on a live. And then she literally hit me up the other day and she was like, hey, so do you want to do it on Thursday? And I was like, okay, sure. So that's
well, it's just so good and so deep, and it's just so like when you start to really see the way you see things, you have that gift, that gift that God has given you, where you see things on a way bigger scale, not just like what's in front of you, not just for, if there's a breakdown or whatever, like you see the purpose of like why whatever is happening is happening.
Yeah.
And you see it on such a massive scale, and it's such a beautiful way to live life, and I just admire that about you, and I love that you're sharing this with this community.
I love you.
So
Thank you, Mama. I got it.
Yeah.
So where was I? So how did it impact us at home, right? Is basically the question, right? So men and women inherited ways of being inside this dynamic, right? So we can say things like we learned how to be from our parents, from our extended families, our friends and their parents and our society, right? And everything from like movies and books to music, right? And so when I thought about it, and one of the distinctions in the Transform Your Marriage program is the big lie. When I really thought about it years ago, I got related to like how like I don't have any evidence of like anybody's relationship ever really working out. Like not really.
And that is the big lie. Most people that are watching won't know what the big lie is if
The-
they're not in the program.
So the big lie is really the distinction that we have inherited a way of being inside of relationships that in the end doesn't work out. And even though we get married and we do the whole thing and the I do's and the, you know, like in the end, there's an underlying sense that it doesn't really work out because we don't have any proof that it worked out for anybody. And if it did, they're outliers, right? But like it's in the end is sort of bankrupt or at least unfulfilled, right? So, but what I'm saying is, does the fact that we inherited this view and this way of being mean that that's how we're supposed to be? Like, is it really working out for us, right? So I believe that it's not. And I also believe that we're becoming more and more aware of this, right? That it's not just happening and we're all kind of like just going through it, but like there's actually a growing awareness around it, right?
Yeah, and share with us, are you feeling the same way? Do you feel like we are becoming aware of it? Of this, you know, would you say like this
Broken,
separation?
well, of this like broken like construct for men and women, right? Like is it really like do you have it like that you believe that like relationships are going to work out and it's always worked out and you know what I mean? That kind of thing, right? Yeah. So so I'll go on, right? So there is a distorted masculine and suppressed feminine that's resulted from thousands of years of patriarchy, right? And so there's nothing wrong with, you know, any of what I'm saying or the inherited roles that I'm talking about. What works and does these roles. Like maybe you go through this and at the end we're like, hey, you know what? It's a good idea that women give birth to children and that men go and, you know, to work while the women are raising the children or whatever it is, right? Like maybe that works out, right? Because it does, right? So I'm not saying that everything about what we inherited doesn't work. I'm looking at the dynamics between us and I'm examining what does and does not work.
And how we
right?
got here.
So what I'm saying is that there is a distorted masculine and suppressed feminine that's resulted from these thousands of years of patriarchy. And I like to use basic symbols to explain what I mean, because I think it's a lot easier when I go black and white and hot and cold and yin and yang, right? And fire and water.
Yeah, it makes the brain understand it a little more.
So like the yin is the feminine, right? Or the water, and the yang is the masculine or the fire, right?
And I want to say that, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. That when we say masculine and feminine doesn't mean man and woman. It's these like energies, right? In the feminine and the masculine that have been portrayed. But, you know, men also carry the feminine energy and women carry the masculine energy.
For sure. So, but what today we're going to talk about is the suppressed divine feminine, right? Like this divine feminine energy and how to heal it and how women can go about healing it. And I'm going to talk about it in terms of fire and water, right? The masculine and the feminine. So the divine feminine is really not another word for feminism. But I do believe that feminism was a necessary step to help prepare the way for the rebirth of the divine feminine, right? So I'm talking about thousands of years of patriarchy, right? Like a suppressed feminine inside of that patriarchy, right? So like a distribution of power that's not equal, right? Where we perceive one power to be, you know, the absolute, right? And the other one to be more suppressed. And what I'm saying is that's balancing right now. It's returning to a wholeness rather than balancing, right? So I think that the feminist movement was a step to help prepare the way for this rebirth of the divine feminine, right? And it is not another way for feminists to assert their equality with men, right? And it's not an attempt to put men down or in their place in order for women to become dominant. Or in other words, it's not an effort to replace patriarchy with matriarchy, right? Which would just be another attempt to control. It's not an attempt to blame men for thousands of years of persecution and violence, right? It's not just another form of separation. It's not like water versus fire. It's not women versus men, right? It is a return to a wholeness. It is an embracing of what is the divine feminine? What is this divine feminine energy and woman, right, in our mantle of society?
Yeah.
Right? So the female gives birth in all species, right? And the feminine is the energy of creation and of infinite love. And the masculine helps manifest it outwardly into the material world, right? So the water gives the birth, right? And the fire, right, creates the physical world, right? And the material in the physical world, right? So I'm going to remind you guys of that paradigm again, right? The feminine's been suppressed and the masculine has been leading. And as a result, it's our perception that any one person's ability to produce in the material world is where the power is, right? Like if the leaders are the masculine and what they're doing is creating power, right? Then what makes sense is to get some of that power. So women have been in a pursuit to learn how to use the fire in order to attain power, right? And in doing so, they've strayed away from their real power, your divine feminine power. I'm not saying that you don't have masculine power and that you can use it and that you should use it, but that the focus has gone away from embracing your power, embracing your miraculous ways of being. Like your sacred water has been passed over because it's still like this women versus men dynamic, right? But
And
go ahead.
no, I have this vision, like, I talk to so many women that are this like control, and we have to control our men, and we have to like push and force and be like this use our masculine energy in order to get results. And consider what Rick is saying is that we have it wrong, like that there is no control and push and force, because that is not who we are. That's right. As women. We are, or it's not even we are, but the feminine energy that we have, that sacred feminine that Rick is talking about, it's not about control or pushing or forcing or being, this like masculine, I don't know, like
way.
Masculine way, but producing results and getting stuff done, and and we think that that's the way because we've been seeing men for so long get results that way. But so
no, that's great, and thanks for saying that because you clear it up. So there's this idea. So what's that woman's name that you did PAX with? Alison Armstrong. So Alison Armstrong, she talks about how women are still I need that so that I can keep talking. Yeah. The women are resentful and angry, right, about what happened with, like, the unresolved traumas that happened with dad or brother or ex-boyfriend or husband or whatever, right? And so women still want to demonstrate power, right, to demonstrate their fire, so to speak, right? And so Alison Armstrong says to actually emasculate men, right, and make them feel like they're less of a man in order to control more or to demonstrate power more, right? So the rise or the rebirth of the feminine, of the divine feminine, starts the process of going from surviving and being separate into a phase of a heart-opening evolution. So this signals a return to wholeness and oneness, in which the masculine and the feminine are joined in harmony, not as separate, but as together. So it's really not about getting back at him or being separate from him. It's about the return of women to their divine feminine selves, to honor and embrace your incredibly powerful ways of being, your mysterious, life-giving, miraculous, magical, loving ways. Like to really embrace that.
AKA, I'm like simple terms, to return to loving yourself. That's why self-care is so big. In modern day, why I talk about self-care and self-love so much, because that is the way we return and the way we honor ourselves, is by taking care of ourselves in that way, because there's no way for us to actually get any results when we don't honor our sacred feminine and when we don't honor ourselves.
So. For sure. And so what I say is that this happens by doing your own inner work, like what Jan is saying too, right? But so not just to love yourself in that way, but to heal. Right? And to clear everything that doesn't serve you, remains hidden from your view, right? So like going deep to look with clarity at this distorted masculine energy and the sort of wounded or suppressed feminine that you've carried for decades and even lifetimes, right? So, generally speaking, it's my experience. This isn't the truth. It's my experience that women have a higher IQ than men do. Why? Because you relate to your feelings more. You literally relate to it more. And you're more conscious of your feelings on a day-to-day basis. So while men, on the other hand, suppress and compartmentalize, right, our emotions in order to continue to produce results that we desperately need in order to survive, right, you guys are really in tune. So along with what Jan is saying, which is to love yourself and allow yourself to indulge in what makes you feel good, right? What I'm also saying is that it's also time to heal.
Yeah.
And to let go of some of these attachments to the resentments and the anger that we have toward the men in our lives and from our past, to begin to really embrace your magical, loving, mysterious ways, right? Which is this divine feminine, the sacred water, right? And so what does that look like? So I hear a lot, and so does Yana, right? About like, well, when is he going to change? When is he going to be different? When is he going to be the one that does this thing or does that thing, so that we can then have what we really want, right? And so what I'm saying is, because you girls, because you women are more conscious in this way, you're more aware of your emotions and your feelings and the dynamics between you two. What I'm suggesting is stop waiting for him to change. Do your own work.
Yeah.
Clear yourself, heal yourself, really get that that's what there is to do. Because even if he's asleep, and what I mean by that is, even if he's not yet aware, right, that there's this wholeness that's available, right, between the masculine and the feminine. Even if he's not, what will happen is, once you start to heal yourself and you start to love yourself and you really start to regard him in this way, right, where it's not me versus you anymore, but we're together and we're a team, and what do we do to create that unity between us, that wholeness between us? What will happen is that you will inspire him to live as the divine masculine that he really is, through your heart-centered, loving power. And this takes courage, right? And this courageous work is really calling you to love, to forgive the men of your past, to heal your wounds, to honor your divine power and the power of the divine masculine as part of this whole, really as not separate beings. The yin and the yang, right, when we see it, they look separate, but they're actually part of a whole unit. And that's the way it is with all of duality and reality. It's actually not separate. It's all part of a whole. And when we completely love ourselves, we'll be able to see the divinity in another person, in a husband, in a friend, mother, father, brother, sister, whatever. We're actually able to see that more. We relate to people more. Like there's a divine being over there. And even those who still want to preserve the patriarchal power paradigm, right? We still see it, and we have compassion. So even if he's still asleep, it's okay.
Yeah.
I promise, I really do. And I've said this to Yana 1,000 times, that if women do the work and return to their heart-centered, creative, loving, powerful ways, that he will see it, and he will feel it, and he'll be inspired by it. And he will want to transform with you. You will challenge him to do that. And you will return to this divine union. And even though I can speak for myself now, and kind of that's all really I wanted to say. There's a little bit more, but that's kind of it. The habits of my separated ego still pull me into fear and judgment, right? I'm really clear that's not where I want to be. Like, I'm really clear that where I want to be is, I want to be pulled by this love that brings me back to this oneness, so that I can be with her, and I can be with our children, and I can be with my extended family and my friends and strangers and all of you, I mean, everywhere, that I can be in that place where we're all really one and we're all already loved. And all there is to do is to really like be a light for each other, help each other heal, and help each other find our ways back to ourselves, right? The truest expression of who we are. And to honor that and allow that and get how sacred that really is. And when we do that, I believe that the union between men and women, that it really creates like a super powerful, super magical, super plugged into the universe way of being that manifests miracles.
Absolutely.
Right? And it really is aligned with the ever expansive quality of life, which life is here to expand, not contract, right? To continue to expand. So Anyway, that's kind of the conversation that I wanted to bring to you guys, and or that Yana wanted to do. So
Mhm.
I realized that it was kind of long and wordy, but
Well, no,
that was
it's
it.
so great. It's so great. And if you're watching live with us, make sure that you say hello. And if you're watching the replay, make sure you say hello as well. And if you have any questions about this conversation, let us know what you think. We love to see your comments, and I read all of the comments. I love to really kind of check in and see where you're at. But it's such a beautiful conversation, and I see this, over and over inside the Transform Your Marriage program when women take on, because the Transform Your Marriage program, I work only with the women. And when women really take on that path of healing themselves and really like they take the attention off making their husband wrong or controlling their husband and worrying about what he's doing or not doing, and just really looking at where they can heal and where they can forgive and where they can, really like complete and clear whatever hasn't been working in their life and their relationship to themselves and their relationship to men, and as a collective, it's like magic happens. And I hear this from women over and over, like my husband, he's just showing up in such a different way. And he doesn't even know that I'm doing this program, or he's been doing things for me and he's never done these things for me, or they share with me how he talks to them or he wants to spend more time with them, and just these miracles that happen. And the point is, when you do that work, when you make that decision to really take that path of healing and really looking within and doing, starts to happen, and you start to really create your outer world, you know that's aligned with that inner world that you're
Mm-hmm.
you're starting to feel. And I, if you are looking for that, if you want that support to heal, reach out to me. I'd love to support you. And that's the work that I do inside the Transform Your Marriage program, and it's incredible. So I hope this session was helpful, and for you to really kind of awaken to the importance of your own healing work, because it really is where you have to start if you want to have any transformation in your relationship. You really have to start within, because every time that we are triggered or disempowered, or something happens that doesn't work, like, not that he's not responsible for it, but the first place to look is like, where is this an opportunity for that healing? What haven't I cleared yet, that I need to clear? What haven't I said? What boundaries haven't I set? Like, how am I responsible that this is occurring in my life right now? And that is the work of of that healing, that divine feminine, and strengthening that muscle, and yeah.
Oh, and the last thing I would say, and that was really well put. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
saying that. I
Mm-hmm.
got it. She broke down all my nerdy speak to like just straight line.
You have to understand when Rick speaks, because my brain is so simple. I need it like, explained to me
You did
like
a great
in
job.
the most simplest terms.
Yeah, you did a great
So
job.
I always, when he speaks, I have this habit of like interpreting everything that he says and putting it into simple terms. And so yeah, so I wanted to just kind of repeat it.
Uh, uh, I would just really quickly, what I would say is that sharing like who you are,
Mm-hmm.
because who you are really inside, it's sacred, and it's powerful, and it makes a difference in the family, and it makes a difference in your relationship, and it makes a difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what this is really uh, about. Is it starts with you really just embracing that self, that powerful, incredible, miraculous self
Mm-hmm.
that you are, and like not having it be anything other than something that's beautiful and something that inspires and something that you honor. And through that stand of really being related to you and who you are and what you're for, you can then begin to heal. You can then to begin to really get that, oh, this isn't really a me versus him thing. This is just a thing where I'm really clear that this is who I am, and I stand lovingly for this, and I express this all of who I am with all this love and all this compassion. And and that's really so the healing and the forgiveness, but also the really standing inside of who you already are.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that. I think as women, and myself included, we walk around like we're not, these magnificent, powerful, not creatures, but like beings. We don't walk around like that. I talked earlier about we have this like inner critic that most of the time runs the show, the ideal woman. We walk around looking at ourselves how we're not skinny enough, we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not da 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 da. It's just never enough. And what you're saying is just, I'm so glad that you're just reminding women of that, because it's really important for us to hear that.
For sure.
From the masculine. And I know a lot of women don't hear that from your partner. I get that. And you have to start to say it to yourself and really create a world around yourself where that is your reality, rather than looking at where he's not affirming those things to you, or he's not showing you those things. So it has to start within, where you are the one affirming it to you. And if you have a relationship with God, I know Susanna, you share all the time, like that's another place to really look for that love and to come from. So
you said something here, Susanna, that I wanted to just touch on real quick too before we end this live. You said, I think you said, what can I do if it's been 15 years and there's miscommunication? How can we talk in a way that we can agree on things that are important? And how can we talk and understand each other and be on the same page? So, first of all, I would say if you haven't taken her course, you got to take her course, because she teaches a lot on how to communicate, right? So she teaches like tactics, right? Ways to do it, right? But based on this conversation, right? How can you talk in a way where you agree on something? If you're coming from that you're honoring the masculine and the feminine, right? That it's part of a union and it's not separate. It's not me versus him or him versus me, but it's us together. So if you're coming from it's us, when you communicate, the way that you communicate is driven by a context where it's really about that you're in it together. And it's, the only way that you win with that context is if both of you win, right? So there can't be a zero-sum, conversation. It can't be well, if he wins, then I lose, and if I win, then he loses. That's what I mean by zero-sum. It has to be a win-win. And it's the only way that the whole wins, right? And so when you communicate and you come through that kind of context where you're empowered to communicate through I really want the both of us to win. How do I do that? You start to veer from like, how am I going to survive, or how do I get him to do what I want to do, and you start to really get like, oh, maybe this time, right? Coming from that, because you're conscious and you're aware of your feelings and you're aware of this conversation, and your consciousness, your awareness has brought you to this conversation. You say to yourself, well, maybe this time I know that he's sleeping. I know he's not aware. I know he's not related to his emotions or his feelings and having, the kind of conversations that I'm having about this stuff. Maybe this time I'm going to get into his world. And maybe this time I'm going to see what it is that's missing for him. Missing, not wrong. Missing. Because if it's wrong, it's you versus him or him versus you. If it's missing, it's about the both of you winning. Right? So what would I do? How can I help him get to whatever it is that's missing for him? And maybe that conversation, that's all that needs to be about. Or maybe the next time you talk, maybe that's about you. Or maybe because of your intuition and you're connected to your divine feminine power, you go, oh, well, wait a minute. Maybe I need to help him heal more. Maybe I need to be over there for him again. And then you're over there for him again. I promise you there will come a time when, if you do that enough, there will come a time when he's ready to be over there with you. And it's not checkers and it's not chess, right? But it's not a quick and easy out. It's just it takes something that takes time, because that's the way energy moves. Inertia is difficult to start, right? It takes a lot of energy to get going. So like if a car's parked, it takes a lot to get it going. But once it's going, it's easy to get it going, right? Yeah. So when you're creating this inertia, You have to get that when you're doing a heart-centered exploration of how to interact with the divine masculine and the divine feminine and bring it back to this wholeness, right? You really start taking a look at, well, what does that really mean for me in my relationship?
Mm-hmm.
And you will start to become more critical about the way you're communicating. And it won't be so much, well, it's been 15 years, how do we do it? 15 years doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is right now. And who are you being now? And who is he for you? And who are you for him?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you guys heal
Mm-hmm.
together? So, and if that just didn't land for you at all, take the course because it's awesome.
And I still have some spots available. So yeah, just
All right.
message me and let's schedule a time to talk. And whatever support you need, I am here for you. Thank you so much for being with us. I so appreciate
Mm-hmm.
all of you every time I go live, and especially with you. I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to have these conversations, and hopefully, they're making a difference. So thank you. Have an
Mm-hmm.
incredible rest of your week,
Yeah, I
and
love
we
you.
will see you soon.
God bless you guys.